All right, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Muscat. Remember, this is the third stop in his three-nation West Asia tour. He's made his way across to the Sultanate of Oman from the United Arab Emirates. At about 4:40 local time is when Prime Minister Modi landed in the Omani capital. He received a ceremonial welcome at the airport itself. It was then to the presidential palace where he met with Sultan Qaboos, the ruler of, or rather the Sultan of Muscat. These are live visuals coming your way from the Omani capital, where Prime Minister Modi is making his way into the Sultan Qaboos Sports Complex, where he is going to address the Indian diaspora. Remember, 25,000 members of the Indian community in Oman have gathered at the complex to hear the Indian Prime Minister's address. It's a huge community, the largest expatriate community in Oman. 20% of Oman's population is made up of people of Indian origin. That's approximately 800,000 people in the Sultanate who are of Indian origin. Now, Prime Minister Modi makes it a point to reach out and spend time with the Indian diaspora in many of his overseas visits. It's been almost a hallmark of his foreign trips. It's been true even for the UAE, where he did interact with the Indian community earlier today. And now it's Muscat's turn, and people have turned up in huge numbers. The excitement is palpable. My colleague Nishita Virendra, in fact, is in Muscat. She's been tracking the Prime Minister's visit from the get-go. She's been interacting with members of the Indian community who say that they are extremely excited that the Indian Prime Minister is in town. They've put together performances. They've been rehearsing for the last couple of days for the Prime Minister's arrival, for the program that's already begun at the sports complex. All right, Nishita Virendra is joining me live on the broadcast right now from Muscat itself, from the sports complex itself. Nishita, Mr. Modi is, of course, already arrived at the stadium. I'm sure the excitement is palpable. Give us a sense of what's going on there as we build up to his address for the Indian diaspora.
Well, the entire stadium just rose in applause as the Prime Minister entered, and they had been waiting for so long, for all these hours, because of the traffic situation. They had to come a good 3-4 hours in advance, and they've all been waiting, preparing, dancing, celebrating, chanting Narendra Modi's slogans. And finally that he is here and they are getting to see him in real. You can hear the applause from even outside the stadium where I'm standing right now. And even as we're standing here and speaking to you, there are people coming in, literally begging the security to let them in. But it is past the time and it is a security hazard, and that's the reason why they're not being allowed inside. But the Prime Minister is speaking to the gathering in just a few minutes from now. He's already arrived, and I can barely hear you because of all the noise around me with the applause and the cheers coming my way.
Right, I just heard that huge roar go up behind you. I suppose they've caught a glimpse of the Indian Prime Minister. With me in the studio also, stay with me, Nishita. With me in the studio right now is Ambassador Arun Singh. He's a former Indian diplomat. He served as India's ambassador to Israel, so well versed with the region. Ambassador, I want to ask you, the Prime Minister is about to speak very shortly. First of all, good evening. Thank you for being here once again.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you, this moment for the Indian community, it's also, I suppose, a celebration of the coming together of, this vast number of Indians living there in Muscat. And I suppose the Prime Minister's visit is perhaps just the best peg for everyone to get together.
No, absolutely. And visiting Indian leaders, Prime Ministers, have traditionally been reaching out to the Indian origin diaspora and having these meetings. But earlier, before 2014, the numbers used to be restricted to 500,000, 1,500. But since the Prime Minister's visit to New York in 2014, when there was this seminal event at Madison Square Garden, where more than 20,000 people were present, which was unique to get that large a number for what was seen as a political rally in a sense. That after that it was felt that bringing in the larger numbers enthuses the community and perhaps makes them also feel it an important occasion when they come together, when they interact with the Indian Prime Minister. And after that, there have been several similar successful events.
Absolutely.
There was one on the west coast of the US in 2015. There were events of 60 to 70,000 people earlier in UAE, in the UK.
Yes.
And then again, large numbers in Singapore and other places.
We saw it last year as well in Israel. So many of the Indian community members gathered there to hear the Prime Minister. In fact, that's what's happening on our screens right now. Prime Minister Modi has arrived on stage. We are waiting to hear what he has to say for the 25,000 strong Indian community that's gathered at the Sultan Qaboos Stadium in Muscat, the capital of Oman. The Prime Minister is going to speak in a short while from now. But we've been tracking his trip across West Asia. He started off, of course, in Jordan, the country that facilitated his visit to Palestine. The Prime Minister making it a point to maintain India's standalone policy when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Palestine, de-hyphenating that relationship, choosing not to visit Israel at all, going directly from Jordan to Palestine, to Ramallah, to meet with President Mahmoud Abbas, and of course after that it was over to the United Arab Emirates, where he first went to Abu Dhabi and then to Dubai earlier today. And today he is in Muscat in Oman, a country that shares a strong and decades-old relationship with India. Just last year, 60 years of the diplomatic relationship between the two countries was commemorated, and now Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Oman for the very first time. We're of course waiting for him to speak to the Indian community that's gathered there in Muscat in huge numbers, something that Ambassador Singh was pointing to a short while ago for us, telling us that it is become part and parcel in many ways of Prime Minister Modi's outreach to the Indian community. And it's interesting that a number of the issues that he brings up, Ambassador, they're of domestic nature, but I suppose they do strike a chord with members of the Indian community because there's family back home. So these issues matter to them as much as they matter to you and me, perhaps, sitting here in New Delhi.
No, absolutely. And they're also concerned about India, not just because of the families, but they have links. Many of them are doing trading with India. So because of that, they also like to hear about what's happening, what are the trends. And with today's communication, they're all reading about it. So in a sense, they may be aware. But to hear it directly from the Prime Minister, his assessment, his interpretation is always important. And you had referred to the Prime Minister's visit to Israel, where he also engaged with the Indian origin diaspora. And that was really interesting because till about 7 or 8 years ago, there was not even a recognition or an understanding or an acknowledgement that there was a significant Indian origin diaspora in Israel.
Right.
People were
Did you gauge that while you were when you were serving there in Israel?
So when I went to Israel, then that was sort of around that time. Me, my predecessors, my successors, we all worked to enhance the understanding, the acknowledgement and engagement of that community with India.
Absolutely. All right, Ambassador, let's listen in.